All right, we'll get started here, everybody. Thank you all for attending what was meant to be the quarter 4 wrap up, but we moved it to post holidays, so everybody's fresh and ready to go for 2024. So today we're going to cover some wrap up for some projects you heard about if you attended some of these webinars this past year, and kind of look at some 2024 previews of upcoming projects. So with that, we'll get moving here. So if you haven't attended one of these webinars previously, they're usually about an hour long. This is the agenda, so we'll just go through some housekeeping requirements. We'll take a look at the panelists and then a brief look at the project overviews. So each panelist will talk about the project they managed in 2023 or will be in 2024. And so then we'll move on to a Q&A session towards the end. So the housekeeping. So this is a webinar format, so we'll be utilizing the Q&A feature. So if you guys have any questions during the webinar itself, you can use that Q&A feature to pose your question. And then once we reach the end of the webinar, we'll address those. So I also wanted to point out that we're recording this session, much like we did with the other webinars, and we're going to continue these webinars in 2024 quarterly. So these will be recorded and then uploaded to the city's YouTube page for further reference. So if you know anybody who wanted to attend today but wasn't able to attend, the recording will be available. We usually try to get those available to everyone as quickly as possible, but generally it takes about a week to get those uploaded. And so today, we may be missing a couple folks, but we've got some public services staff here to assist in talking about some of these projects. So we have Dennis Randolph, who's our traffic engineer, George Waring, who's one of our senior civil engineers, Tom Palumbo, who's another senior civil engineer, and we also sometimes have Anthony Ladd, who's our assistant director of public services, and then myself, Nolan Bergstrom, the community planner, housed in the community planning and economic development department. So those will be the folks that will be here to talk about these projects and help answer questions towards the end. So this is the sort of agenda of these are the projects we'll cover today. Some of them you may have already heard some information about. Ransom Street Phase 1, we'll talk about that a little bit and just mention that when Phase 2 will start. Patterson Street Bridge, Michigan Avenue, Inkster Bridge, White's Road, Westnedge Avenue, and then some information about our Safe Streets for All initiative in 2024. And generally, this is how we go through each project. So there'll be the project name at the top and generally a location. So that location being the extent of the project itself. So, you know, usually it's an intersection to an intersection. We'll have a general timeline. So, you know, with the 2024 projects, and we're still a little bit of ways from finalizing all the timelines for those. So information is often tentative and subject to change. So my suggestion is definitely subscribe to following these projects on the City of Kalamazoo website. That will ensure that you get updates frequently about changes to these projects as new information comes out. We'll talk about or showcase a little bit of the total cost and the source of that funding. And then usually just kind of a broad overview. So starting with Ransom Street, phase 1 occurred this year, from July to November approximately. And phase 2 work is going to start up again as soon as possible in 2024. This is a pretty big project, complete, redesign and reconstruction of the street. Dennis, George, or Tom, did either of you want to cover more in detail with this project, at least phase 2?
Yeah, I'll let Dennis go ahead and with this one, Nolan.
I was just going to say that phase 1 is basically complete. There's some sidewalk fixes to do, some places where the utility companies hadn't completed their work. So that's why you may see some spots along that segment that don't seem done. That was a utility problem. And as soon as they have to remove some poles. And when they do that, then our contractor will finish that up and finish buttoning that piece of street up. So basically, I think what you see out there is pretty much how you're going to see things as we move to the west in the spring. We did authorize the contractor to do to be able to work in the winter, or if the weather stays decent. And it's hard to tell right now. It's supposed to start snowing a little more, but our objective really is to get that job done as quickly as possible. But it'll still extend through most of the summer this year because it's a lot of work. We're doing sewer and water and street rebuild, sidewalks, landscaping. So it's a kind of full service project that you'll see. But in any case, it is moving along, and we have been adjusting some of the traffic controls out there, like we do on most of our streets after a job is done, just to kind of suit things with the new traffic.
Yeah, great. That's a good wrap up, Dennis. I know this is one of the bigger projects, so continuing into 2024, I look forward to seeing how it gets implemented. Moving on, this one's going to be pretty brief, but the Patterson Street Bridge project, this was a pretty big 2023 project, lasted the entire year, but has since reopened. I don't know if anyone from Public Services wants to add to this, but
No, I mean, not anything too much, Nolan. Just the project finished up well. The main delay with it was just utility issues at the end, waiting for utility company to come in and move some of their lines out of the way so the work could be safely completed. And then once that was completed, we reopened the bridge, and it's functioning as it should, and just got its new load rating, and so everything's wrapped up for that.
Awesome. Thanks, George. All right. So one of the other projects that kind of wrapped up, closer to the end of 2023 was Michigan Ave, from West Main to Harrison. This was kind of sectioned off into different pieces. So there was the pothole patching and surface sealing portion, and then a road layout change with the addition of some pilot bike facilities. So Dennis, did you want to add some more to this? Specifically thinking about, thinking ahead to 2024?
Sure. I guess the main thing I could add is that we have been adjusting all of our traffic control devices. We've been beefing up the signing and watching traffic, and pretty much every day we've been out. Somebody from our staff has been there doing some surveys or watching traffic, and we're adjusting signing and also the signals so that we can accommodate things. Now, the last 3 or 4 weeks with the holidays and schools out, traffic's been a little lighter. traffic will be picking up again the next couple weeks. And so we'll continue to adjust things, mainly trying to get the timings, the timing for vehicle traffic, for pedestrian traffic, and also for the bike facility to all work together as efficiently as we can. We also are doing a couple of other things. In particular, the state had control of the street for many years, and they didn't have all the signals connected together the way you'd like to, so that they can stay coordinated. And we're doing some of that work now and installing some cameras to help us monitor the traffic, make sure we're catching problems, and also to help us tune them up. So again, you'll see minor adjustments here or there. And again, over the next couple of weeks as schools get back in session, we'll be out checking again, mainly trying to make sure we can get the signals to work together to serve all the different kinds of traffic that's out there.
Great. Appreciate that, Dennis. And then thinking about, with the weather changing, are there plans to keep the bike facility as clear as possible, as well as the parking throughout the winter?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in the fall, late summer. Actually, we started talking about it with our crews and our snowplow staff, who do a real nice job. We removed some of the bollards that are out there, people can see, so that our trucks could get in and out a lot better. And we will do our best to maintain. Now, the priority is first are the through traffic lanes. That makes sense. That's where we hit things first. Then we'll move over into the parking lanes and make sure they're clear, and so people can park and get over to the sidewalks. And then we'll do the bike lanes. So there is a priority. There's always a priority in snow removal, no matter where you are or what kind of snow you have. And that will be our priority. We try to keep traffic going, get the parking, and then make sure the bike lanes are clear. And it's not a matter that we take a week. Okay, if there's a really nasty blizzard, it takes a little longer for our crews to get around town and to do all the things they need to do. But it's a continuous process. But also the real final cleaning during any storm for our crews is when the snow stops. Okay, we're out there during the storms doing things, blading, putting salt and other chemicals down. But you really can't do a final cleanup until it does stop snowing. And so hopefully everybody remembers that. But that's when our final push is to clean things up.
So appreciate that clarification, Dennis. Okay. So looking a little bit ahead to some of the projects that, you'll see covered in 2024, thinking about projects you may have been hearing about for the past couple of years, as they've been kind of planned for a while as part of the capital improvement, planning. But Inkster Street Bridge, so it's been closed since 2021 due to some structural integrity issues. And so in 2024, this project is actually going to be moving forward. So I'll pass it off to George or Dennis on this one to cover.
Yeah, thanks, Nolan. So for Inkster Street and for the bridge that goes across Bronson Boulevard there, we are looking at construction going forward in late February, early March. The first part of that was going to be demolition of the old bridge, for which Bronson Boulevard is going to be closed until that demolition's done and it's safe to reopen the road. They'll also have different periods of closure when they're putting up the new bridge structure, as they have to have some heavy equipment and are putting the actual beams of the bridge structure over the roadway. So that'll be fully closed. There'll be detours going around that for both Bronson Boulevard, as well as pedestrian routes that are on Bronson and on Inkster. So we'll be signing those and accommodating pedestrian and bicycle and vehicle detours around that closure. And then really what that bridge is going to be is it's going to be a really nice update to the bridge that was there. It's not going to look like a highway bridge. It'll be a nice structure that fits in with the surrounding area. So there was a lot of input from the community on that that resulted in some aesthetic design going into the structure. There'll be some sidewalk upgrades to it, as well as it'll continue to have vehicle traffic across and really be a brand new structure when it's completed. So we're looking forward to that project finally going, and some good, a needed connection being made through that area of town.
Yeah, and there'll be some upgraded lighting around the bridge as well, correct?
Correct. So there'll be pedestrian lighting underneath the bridge, as well as lighting on top of the bridge. So that'll be a big improvement in the area with the tree cover, which is really nice during the day, and especially in the summers and falls. Having that tree cover there is great, but it also makes for a darker area at nighttime. So we're upgrading the lighting throughout there to accommodate that.
Great. And it's not listed on here in the timeline, but this project won't take the entire year?
Correct. So right now the schedule we have goes for about 6 months. So that'll depend on the actual start date. But right now the expected schedule is for it to be complete 6 months from start.
Got it. Thanks. And one more thing, just for the detouring, how long will that be in a part of this project?
So the pedestrian detours will be up pretty much for the duration of the project, because even if the roadway is open for a portion of it, there's still going to be a lot of work. Obviously, for Inkster Bridge, the detour, the pedestrian route along there won't be in place until the new bridge structure is in place and it's open to traffic. So that won't be till the end of the project. And then same thing with underneath the structure. That's not going to be open back up until the bridge is open to traffic. So the pedestrian detours we expect to be in place the duration of the project.
Awesome. Now moving on to another project in the area. Again, it was a phased project, so White's Road, there was some work done between Oakland and what you would consider the beginning of White's. It's a little stretch of Parkview Avenue, I suppose, just east of Oakland Drive that was worked on this year. And I'll, turn it over to George or Dennis or Tom to talk about what's going to be coming in 2024 with the work between Oakland and Westonage.
Okay. Yeah, so between Oakland and Westonage, it's going to be water main work. Continues from where they left off there at White's Road, and it goes all the way to White's. They'll be in a couple different sections of that area, just depending on how many crews they have working. And they'll be replacing water main and then rebuilding the road after the water main's replaced through that section. I do want to point out that the traffic signal work at Oakland and Parkview, where a lot of the concrete work was redone in the first phase, the actual traffic signal is not in its final configuration. So we've left that in the split phasing that signal's operated in for quite some time. So that signal where it looks like from the actual construction and striping like that intersection is completed. At this time, it's not. There'll be more work on that this spring with the signal actually being completed, rewired, and the signal heads put in their permanent locations and the timing optimized for that area. And again, that won't be in full completion until that project's complete. So I know we've heard a lot from residents in that area about that signal intersection, and we've made some adjustments with what we have in infrastructure there and what's possible at the moment. But I did want to remind the residents and the folks who drive that corridor to just be patient at the light as we're still upgrading that infrastructure. So it's not all there. All the signals aren't all done. But that's something that we're working through. And then as that work gets completed and the road gets rebuilt, that road will go down to be a road diet. So it'll accommodate traffic with a left-hand turn lane in there. That way through traffic is not impeded as they continue along. But that way it's also less prone to left-hand turning incidents. And it also accommodates bike lanes and safer pedestrian crossings throughout there.
Yeah, there'll be some ADA work along this stretch as well, George. Particularly, I'm thinking of the intersection of Bronson and Whites. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So Bronson Whites, that intersection is going to be redone to be really squared up to where the crossings for pedestrians will be shorter and the ramps will be ADA compliant. Where presently they are not. So that will be a really neat improvement to that particular intersection, actually allowing pedestrians to cross Whites Road safely, as well as Bronson Boulevard. And then that'll really set us up for being able to tie in any sidewalk added to the north side of the roadway along Bronson or along Whites. So it's really a needed improvement there with some old infrastructure that hasn't been updated in quite some time. And that ADA sort of work is happening at every intersection. So in any intersection we're approaching or touching, as making sure that all of the push buttons, as well as the ramps and the sidewalk, is all up to ADA compliance.
Great. Thanks, George. Just wanted to stop for a second, let everyone, just a reminder too, that with these specific projects, the city website has pages for these where you can subscribe and get updates to these. So especially if you know people who live or commute or frequently use this stretch of roadway for any of these projects, let them know, like I said, this will be recorded so they can come back to this, but they can also subscribe to get those updates on the project as the project goes along in 2024. So just wanted to quickly remind everybody about that. So moving along, we've got Westnedge Avenue from Whites to Vine. So just as a brief preface, this is kind of a continuation of work that had been done the past few years. But since Westnedge Ave is such a large street, it had to be phased out a certain way. So Dennis, George,
Yeah.
Can you take the lead here?
Yeah, so we actually just met with the contractor on this today regarding maintenance of traffic and timing for this work. So which Westnedge Avenue work is going to be very impactful for traffic with just the amount of traffic that comes along Westnedge. The work is going to involve water main pretty much going down the center of the street, and that's just where it's located. And so all the water mains need to get replaced through there. So they will be placing new water main along that whole stretch and then redoing the road after the water main's in, which is going to cause a lot of delays on Westnedge Avenue. We're still planning on north and southbound remaining open in the two-way section of Westnedge Avenue. And then one lane will remain open in the one-way section of Westnedge Avenue. So there will be quite a bit of work going on in that section. And just a reminder to anybody traveling that if you're able to find an alternate route that takes you to where you need to go, that would be great to do. There's going to be a lot of construction work in that area, so it's going to be really important to just remember to go slow and travel through there with caution, as there will be a lot of construction workers and equipment replacing that water main, tying it into the side streets, replacing sidewalk, and redoing the roadway. So this one will be quite impactful of traffic. There'll be sections of and times of it that will be detoured when certain intersections are worked on. So just as a reminder, what Nolan was saying, to keep up with the updates, if you can subscribe to this page, if you regularly travel Westnedge, I would really, really recommend subscribing to the page so you get updates as soon as possible about detours and next phases of work. This is going to be a very impactful project, and it's a lot of money, but this is hopefully the only time we have to do it in the next 100 years. So just keep that in mind. This infrastructure is very old, and so we're kind of at that point where we need to replace it, and that's what we're doing. And fortunately, Westnedge is a busy street, and it's a main thoroughfare, so it'll be very, very impactful.
Thanks, George.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the next project we're going to cover briefly. So work is coming to Michical Avenue from Maine to Kalamazoo. So this is part of the Kalamazoo Avenue work, one phase of it. Dennis, did you want to talk about Michical?
Sure, George. Yeah, Michical is the first part or the first step in our conversion for Kalamazoo Avenue. And that work, as you can see, we're in the bidding process. And hopefully we would be able to start construction in the spring when weather allows, as soon as possible. And at least for Michical, there'll be a full closure on Michical. And we're hoping that that work would be done sometime in the summer. I'm hoping before Labor Day-ish, but that final phasing is always dependent upon what the contractor is proposing for us. But it will be closed. And again, one of our concerns, as George is mentioning, we're going to have work going on Westnedge too. So we're going to be having some north-south travel congestion. And hopefully if you subscribe to the pages, you'll know best when we're moving things around. I think after Michical is done, then we'll be going into the second phase of work, which will include the improvements that we'll be doing on West Kalamazoo, that part of Kalamazoo between Douglas and Westnedge, Douglas, and then West Main. That's the second phase of our conversion project. And then the third phase, which would come basically next year, will be Kalamazoo from Westnedge back to Harrison. And that would complete that whole project. So it's a big project. It'll affect certainly east-west traffic through downtown, but also again, like with Michical, it's a north-south problem. And since we're doing other work on Westnedge, we have to do a lot of coordination between our contractors to make sure that there are ways to get through town. And I guess I wanted to mention, I'm going to take this one step because I know the last couple of years have been kind of tough downtown traveling around. Some of the projects were city projects. Some of the projects were utility projects and private development projects, which, while we give permits out, we don't always have a lot of control over how those projects time out or the amount of time that they spend. And so you'll see things like the closure on Park Street right at the end of the summer during fall was not a city project. It was a utility project to bring improved utilities, just like our sewers and water. Utilities wear out, they have to be replaced and expanded. And so there will be utility work out there. We're trying to develop systems so that everybody can get a better feel on when that work is happening and where we have permits out, but that's a work in progress. So again, these construction pages are probably the best way for you to keep track of what's going on as far as the work. But again, there's a lot of things going on, and it's probably one of the other things you'll see. Again, it's kind of a public-private partnership. You'll start seeing utility work being done for the event center also during the summer, which will affect Westnedge and Kalamazoo and a number of the streets right in that particular area. So a lot's happening, again, to fix things up that just needed to be fixed up, but also things to make improvements for the future, which I think is great for the city, but it's tough to travel around. The other thing I wanted to mention, and it was tied a bit to the Westnedge project, but we have been eliminating lanes around town on Park and Westnedge. We did it a couple years ago. And downtown on Michigan, we eliminated some lanes. And we did that for the primary purpose of trying to calm traffic and slow it down. We've got a real severe speeding problem in town, and the speeding is causing a lot of injuries to people, drivers in cars, pedestrians, bicyclists. And what we're trying to do is reduce the number of crashes and especially reduce the number of injuries to people, because that fatals and injuries are serious matters for a community. Eliminating lanes is one way of slowing traffic down. And what we're seeing in our numbers is a nice reduction, not only total crashes, but in injury crashes, which is really important. Yeah, traffic is slowing down. That's what we intended, but it's the speed that hurts people, and that's what we're trying to do. So again, some of the lane closures have been targeted specifically at that. As a side benefit, when we close a lane to slow cars down, we end up with extra pavement. And what we've been trying to do is put that pavement to use with bike facilities or things like that. So again, safety has been our real emphasis, and that's it is at least numbers, and we're working on last year's numbers right now, but they're very positive in that we're cutting injuries to people and we're reducing total crashes. So I guess two parts of the story. We're doing some of the things to make the streets safer, and they are getting safer. But also there is a lot of construction that you're going to be seeing. This summer is going to be kicking off a long series of improvements to streets and utilities that will be tough for drivers, and we certainly understand that. But I think in the end, you're going to see some nice improvements and a lot of benefit to the community. Thanks, Nolan.
Thanks, Dennis. I wanted to point out sort of a common thread with a lot of these projects too, is that there's quite a bit of work happening underground as well as above ground. So George mentioned it earlier in the webinar, but with Westnedge as an example, right? It's usually a sort of dig once mentality where it'll be hard for a little while, but the idea being that this major infrastructure will be upgraded, and that will set us up for the future where we don't necessarily have to go back into that street for a very, very long time, which in the long run will be very, very helpful. And then some of these other major projects that have been mentioned as well are on streets that are fairly wide. Were built fairly wide, and I don't know if it was mentioned, but it can be quite expensive to move those utilities and curbs to a narrower street, so to speak, which is why many of these projects utilize paint or other resources to either try pilots out or make these changes without such a substantial cost. Okay. So last set of work I want to talk about that's coming in 2024. You may have heard about already, but it's an initiative called Safe Streets for All. It's a traffic calming initiative that's going to be citywide. Currently, on the City of Kalamazoo website, there's a ton of information about the traffic calming locations and locations for bike facilities. There's going to be a lot of projects. Right now, we're asking for resident feedback on these projects, via online surveys. You can always submit information via 311 as well. So there's not enough room on one slide, is what I'm trying to make a point of it, to fit all the information for all these projects. But if you visit the website, all the information should be listed there. So I'll pass it off to George to maybe just go through, from a 30,000 foot view, what this initiative is all about, maybe where the money's coming from, and what type of facilities you might see with traffic calming.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nolan. So the big thing for this one is Safe Streets for All. We received a grant from the federal government for this work, and this is a part of initiative to create safer streets that work for both pedestrians, cyclists, non-motorists, as well as motorists. Really developing a plan for our city that would incorporate improving safety across the city. So this work is a part of our planning grant. This is a planning grant that allows us to also trial some different types of elements that we can incorporate into permanent design in future projects. But really having a plan is the first step to incorporating this sort of work in future projects, so we know where we're going. That way we don't just put these in haphazardly, but instead it's systematic with a look at the city as a whole, and not just looking at one individual street, but really looking out at our entire network and all the residents and the visitors who come and use our infrastructure. So this project with the planning, we're going to be trialing out various elements. So these will include different traffic calming applications, which is everything from speed humps, which we're all familiar with, and using them in more locations and how that overall affects the street, as well as trialing out things such as pedestrian refuge areas and median islands, and what effect that has on traffic speed and safety in that area. There'll also be some look at specific neighborhoods and different traffic calming features there. And then also protected bicycle facilities. That is something that we applied for as a part of this grant to trial that sort of work and see how we might maintain that as a city. What are the complications we get into when it comes to snow clearance, when it comes to sweeping, and just general maintenance of a cycle facility when it's protected, and learning those items in a low cost environment is really what the intention of this is. And then those trials then feed the overall planning document. And that's what we'll use going forward as the city, as we do Imagine Kalamazoo 2035 and other larger strategic plans that will feed those plans and really help the city improve on the safety side. Additionally, what this lets us do is be competitive for future grants for infrastructure. The federal government has recognized the need for safety on streets. So as they recognize that, they're also awarding different funds to help municipalities such as ours out in building safe infrastructure that meets the demands of all users and really helps facilitate that movement of people and goods across the city in a safe way. So having this plan helps us not only meet our own safety goals, but also helps us be competitive for federal funding that we would not otherwise not be competitive for. And so it's a really great grant that lets us be able to do that. So we're excited about this work. So as much a big part of that is public input, good or bad, what people like, what they dislike, what's favorable, what's not favorable. As really this is the phase where we get to tailor this sort of safety trial work for our city. We don't have to base it off of anyone else in the sense that we get to try these things out and see what works and what doesn't, and then build our safety plan off of that. So really excited that this project's coming along with help from the feds.
Awesome. Thanks, George. I'll point out too that, some of this work, or, a good majority of it was informed by documents we might already have as well. So neighborhood plans, as an example, when we look at like Edison neighborhood, East Side neighborhood, North Side, Maple Street, with Oakland Drive, Winchell, and some of the treatments along that section. Vine Neighborhood Association, when we think of the Level Street cycle track, which had previously been a pilot project. And then, just thinking about, these are just starting points. So as George pointed out, input's very valuable. So if you know anyone who may not know that the surveys are up online, who live in these neighborhoods or in these areas of where these projects will take place, definitely let them know. We want the feedback to help really ground, lived context for these projects. I can cover this slide. So looking ahead to 2024, and there'll be more information coming out soon, either today or tomorrow. Just about a couple other opportunities in the early part of this year to touch base with staff, specifically about some of these major projects that were discussed. So we've been working with the leadership over at the Girl Scouts Regional Center here in Kalamazoo to, have a nice available space to have a open house. In the past, we've done open houses at different locations. Some of you may have gone to the one at the Maple Street YMCA. We wanted to pick a location that had good parking so we could get a lot of people there, and a big enough space so we could really have this open house style format to allow residents to come in and talk through some of the projects, at a more granular level sometimes. So we're going to be hosting these January 16th, February 20, and March 19. All three of those are Tuesdays, and the events will start from 4:30 and go until 6:30. The first one, January 16th, you've probably noticed, but some of these projects are heavily focused in the, West Edge Hill, Oakland Drive, Winchell, Vine neighborhoods, but this is open to all residents who inevitably commute or live along or very near these projects and would like to stay informed. So these are 3 extra opportunities to touch base with staff. Like I said before, we'll still have quarterly webinars in 2024. I also wanted to shout out that the city is also through mid-February, looking for feedback from residents on how best to engage with residents on different topics. we certainly try our best to make sure, you know, mailers go out, or we have opportunities like this or webinars, other things to really get engaged with folks through media outlets, all that sort of stuff. But we want to hear more from residents on, you know, what exactly what's used, what could be the best avenue to reach the most people. And so that's not just specific to street projects, that's to, you know, just engagement in general. So our events, all sorts of stuff. So be on the lookout for that on the city website. And
Hey Nolan,
Yeah.
before we get to questions, I got one more project that I'd like to add. I apologize for not getting the slide to you soon enough, but we've also got pull up my info here. It's Howard Street from Stadium to Michigan. And that is a $725,000 project. Federal grants are going to cover about 65% of that, with the city major street fund covering the rest. That is on our website with all our other projects for next year, or this year. It's 2024 now. Yeah, that project is going to be mostly resurfacing from Stadium to Michigan. As I mentioned, it won't include the intersections of either of those streets. But then there's also going to be just a couple other small changes that come to that area that's going to improve that a little bit. So again, that is on the website. You can read all about it there, subscribe to it. And that will be, we'll be talking about that in all of our future meetings too. So including the open houses, I believe. So
yeah, that's a
one too.
That's a good catch, Tom. Thank you for that. Yes. So yeah, 2024 is going to be the year of a lot of major projects. That's the common theme here. So moving on to some of the questions folks have had. So I know a couple of them have been answered already, but I'll kind of start from the beginning. There's been some discussion that Michigan Ave work is still continuing. I guess Dennis or George, you want to talk about how that project is kind of a long-term pilot, how it kind of connects to the downtown work?
I think we are making changes regularly. Like I said before, we're adjusting signs. In the spring, you will see some adjustments to the pavement markings. We're going to try to make the parking lane a little wider for folks. We'll encroach into the bicycle track a little bit to do that. And so again, we're adjusting signals, we're upgrading signals. It is a pilot, and it'll be a pilot until we get into basically the Michigan Avenue conversion, which will start. Actually, we're in the process of hiring the design engineer right now. So you're going to hear more and more about Michigan Avenue starting later in the winter, early in the spring. But we are making changes. And again, I think our concern has been safety. There's always been parking along the Michigan Avenue, and there always have been cars speeding right next to the people parking 50, 60 miles an hour, which was not safe at all. Not safe at all. So we've been able to slow folks down. There's still parking, and there's still cars running next to the parking. So that hasn't really changed. Again, we'll adjust the parking a bit in the spring when the paint trucks start working to try to take care of some of the tightness. But the tightness, in fact, is part of the effect we wanted, because it does make drivers slow. The fact is, some people just don't care. And unfortunately, when they crash into innocent drivers going down the street, they still don't care. Michigan Avenue has always been posted as a 35-mile-an-hour street and a 30-mile-an-hour street. People have not obeyed that speed limit. And that has been the big problem of why there have been so many people injured and hurt out there. So what we're trying to do is manage that. And it goes to another one of the questions I saw about, changing, say, or enforcement. And it will always need enforcement because there are always going to be drivers who just don't care about anyone else but themselves. And we need the police to be able to do enforcement, but they have to manage their resources for a lot of reasons. But if you look around the entire United States, the country as a whole, what you'll find is that enforcement is important. But if we build a road so people feel comfortable driving 60 miles an hour on it, some people will do that. And so modern traffic safety and engineering concepts say, yeah, we want enforcement, but what we're also going to do is design the roads so people will drive at a certain safe and reasonable speed. And how you do that is by making them narrower, having less lanes, doing a lot of the things that you see. And you don't just see them here in Kalamazoo, you see them up in Grand Rapids, in Ann Arbor and Lansing, Battle Creek, all the cities around us are doing this type of thing. So we're not conjuring up a bunch of weird ideas to make things difficult for the folks around here. We're taking part in a nationwide effort to try to make streets safe because we kill 40,000 people a year on our streets. And the number of injured is probably several times higher than that, which is just a tragedy that begins on just about every street that you go out on in the morning. So again, a lot of the things that we're doing have been in the city's master plan for years. And it was just a matter of always finding funds to be able to do things. But in the case of some of our streets, like Westnedge and Park and Michigan and Kalamazoo, for years, they were owned by the highway department, and we had to work out an arrangement with the highway department to take control of those streets so that we could do things to make them safer and more city-like. So again, I think enforcement is important. We always want enforcement. We support the police department to do that, but they again have a lot of things that they have to do besides enforcing. So we're trying to help that situation by making our roads so it isn't so comfortable to drive toward.
Thanks, Dennis. I think there was a question too about, how is all this downtown work affecting businesses? I know community planning and economic development staff and public services staff have been in contact consistently with Southwest Michigan First, and through them, the downtown businesses. There's been quite a bit of engagement with folks downtown, trying to make sure their concerns regarding a lot of these projects are informing staff and helping kind of, that engagement helps guide some of the work. Even, for example, like with the redesign of Kalamazoo Ave, knowing that on-street parking was a feature that wanted to be retained. So the redesign of Kalamazoo Ave helped achieve that, keeping on-street parking while also trying to achieve the safety goals that Dennis just outlined. Moving on to a question about whites. Actually, there's two questions about whites. Maybe we can answer them in one. Is there an opportunity to protect new bike lanes on whites, even with something soft, in quotes, like a protection like rumble strips, along the painted line. And similarly, along White's, at the White's and Bronson intersection, will the redesign of that intersection eliminate the slip lanes?
I can speak to that one a little bit, I think, unless Dennis, you had something.
No, go ahead, Tom. That's fine.
We've been looking into, pretty much every possible option for protecting bikes from vehicles. As you've seen a lot of those plastic posts. We call them delineators around the city. There are some other things out there, and there's a lot of options. I don't specifically know for Whites, but yeah, we've looked at quite a few things. One of the things that makes it difficult is just thinking about we have to look at it from a liability perspective, and if something gets hit by a vehicle and somebody gets hurt, and they maybe wouldn't have been hurt if it wasn't there, then obviously that's going to be a really big problem. So we got to really we can't just go throwing just anything up. Not that I think anybody is suggesting that. But yeah, we are looking into a few different things, and we're I don't know how many times we use the word pilot in a given week, but we often do trial new things, see how they work for us. So and we always welcome comments about how things are working or not working, and that's all I've got on that. Is there anything else that you would say about that, Dennis?
I might mention just about the rumble strips, and I've used rumble strips. I like them. One of the problems with rumble strips, though, in the city is that they are noisy, and in the city they can disturb a whole neighborhood, and that's why we tend to keep away from them. You see them out in the country. That's usually where I've used them. So that's one reason we try to think of some other way to protect things like our bikes lane. And also, I think that you talk about the slip lane, that is going to go away. The only reason you build something like that is to help people keep going fast. And so you'll see those going away where we work on a project. And again, we want people to be able to move around, no problem. We want people to circulate in the city. That's exactly what our streets are for. But we really would hope that people would obey the speed limits because they're there for a real good reason. Safety. We don't want people hurt. And unfortunately, in the past, not only here, but all across the country, an emphasis was given on making people be able to go fast. And a lot of people have died because of that. And so that's what we're trying to correct. I know it's a big change. It's a difficult change to understand, but in the end, we hope even if we can save a few lives, it's well worth the cost.
All right, so we're just about at time, so I'm gonna go with one more question. So this one's related to Michigan Avenue. Will there be any bicycle counters installed to measure the potential increases in use?
Yes, we have a system that we're in the process of getting that will give us information about bike counts. We also have, we're working with CATS, which is our local planning agency, and they have some counting equipment. We've been getting some count information from them. So we have been upping our game in terms of this kind of information, and we'll have, and so, yeah, over the next year, you'll be hearing more about the numbers as we get them.
All right, well, Appreciate everybody for attending today. So like I said earlier in the webinar, please watch for information either today or tomorrow about the upcoming open houses at the Girl Scouts Regional Center. Also watch the City of Kalamazoo calendar and social media about upcoming webinars in 2024 that will cover these projects. And then also please check out the website project pages so you can subscribe to receive updates about these projects. If you have any questions about projects that weren't covered today, or maybe want to get feedback, you can use 311. You can also attend city commission meetings to present public comment. You can either call in or attend that in person. So with that, thank you everyone for attending and have a good rest of your day. Stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.